Computer. Okay, here we go. Welcome everybody to Hash Church 3.0, episode 17. We're still going. We just can't be stopped. It's these people just have nothing else to do. They just need Hash Church. We all need Hash Church. And so here we are on a Sunday morning, bright and early. No, we're not on Clubhouse right now. We are on Hash Church. So welcome to everyone. Welcome to Johnny B and Etienne and Hemp Guy and everyone else that's going to show up here in the near future. How the hell are you guys?
Doing good.
Rock and roll.
I'm loading up a bowl and doing the first thing we need to do. This is my first rip of the day.
Oh, Super Bowl. Is it Super Bowl Sunday, Johnny?
In this bowl it is. I got some first bounce cleaned up nicely and hitting it on the old school. So it's kind of like old barrel together.
Nice. Lighting it with the lighter old school style. I remember doing that.
I need matches. Thanks for the tip there, Scott Man. The matches are the best way of actually smoking it. I used to use the hemp line all the time, but I kept going out. I kept tasting the hemp wick, and I was like,
you got to be careful with the hemp line.
When you use the lighter, you got to use it, and then you taste that butane, and it really is kind of like, I know. And I'm using Remo today. See it?
Remo. There's the Ames Institute. That's going to be Dr. Allison in the house, balancing out all this male energy with some wonderful female energy.
Good morning.
This Temple Flow rosin bubble is a killer.
Good morning, Allison. How are you doing?
I am recovering from a long day of psychedelics.
I could hear it in your voice.
You had a really good day yesterday, didn't you?
No. I'm at a ladies' retreat. What are you talking about, Johnny B?
Oh no, it wasn't that good. What? No spiritual enlightenment was found. What? Everybody stayed grounded. What?
No. So we started the day with I led a ketamine assisted spiritual journey for everybody but myself. So I was the sitter, and then I don't even think we ate breakfast and went straight into MDMA and LSD and enjoyed the snow. And that I think carried on into really way into the night. I think we ate a meal yesterday, maybe like AC Braddock we did eat. AC Braddock made this amazing African peanut soup with prawns in it. We did eat. So that was our meal for the day, but it was an interesting day. You know, you get a group of ladies. It had peanuts in it, yes.
Interesting. Have you ever heard of staying away from peanuts before an ayahuasca trip?
I have not. Well, I've heard of going vegan before an ayahuasca trip, but not peanuts.
No,
my friend Sean got pretty into it, and he was really focused on the diet, and he started, creating a list of foods that should absolutely be avoided. That through his own bioassay, and man, he said that the eating of peanuts was probably one of the biggest mistakes he ever did before an ayahuasca trip. And I guess it just, for whatever reason, those particular peanuts interacted in a bad way and just caused him just an excessive amount of purging.
Probably the worst thing to eat before ayahuasca is the musical fruit.
The musical fruit. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Well, isn't ayahuasca kind of like ketamine in the sense that you usually get nauseous? I know when I was given ketamine, I was moving so fast in my brain that I got nauseous.
Ketamine, there's a difference. And I think everyone yesterday who took all the other drugs as well was like, ketamine is very different than any drug, including ayahuasca. Ayahuasca can tend to cause an evacuation, either the front, the back. And so having a diet that has like no dairy and no meats can help minimize that evacuation process, if it will. But if you're still holding on to a lot of emotional and psychic material, you're going to purge or get nauseous either way. And I find that with ketamine, especially with my chronic pain patients who've been holding on to pain and emotional trauma on a cellular level, they tend to get nauseous and throw up as well. There's a lot of purging. But yesterday, thankfully, nobody got nauseous, nobody threw up, and it was a really positive beginning to the start of the women's retreat.
That's awesome. That's what we like to hear. That's amazing. And I'm just so glad you could pop in for a few minutes.
Yeah. Well, I'd hope that like some of these other ladies would. But like I said, I left them at like 2 a.m. Because I had tapped out.
Well, doing that many different drugs, I think they might be sleeping right now, considering you started off with the ketamine and MDMA. Then, yeah, that's a robust day of psychonauting.
It really and it was snowing, so like there was also like some snow trail walking and some hot tubbing and some art making, and it was we set pure intentions for the weekend. We started out where we talked about like what we wanted to achieve, and we're achieving it.
And
Good morning, Mark.
Do you consider ketamine a true psychedelic, or is it just a very strong depersonalization drug?
Well, that's a really good question, Sam. For in the intent and purposes of our clinic, I would say that it causes an ego death, and that therein lies a property of psychedelics that we can use therapeutically. Yeah. So I think that it depends on who you talk to. Like a veterinarian probably wouldn't say that, oh yeah, ketamine psychedelic. But at the Ames Institute, we consider it psychedelic.
It was quite
I remember
psychedelic when I used it.
I remember going to a psychedelic conference in Whistler that had everyone. It was the whole gamut, and I think it might have been in like the early 2000s or the very late 90s. And I met a guy there who it's a very small community in the 90s and the early 2000s. The psychedelic community was just this fraction of the cannabis community that would kind of travel around, and you could meet these key people, and very easy to meet almost the entire community at a single 1 or 2 events. And I met a guy, a real tripper, and he told me like by far his favorite psychedelic experience was intermuscular injections of ketamine. And he was literally like, I leave my body, I fly through the universe, I can go and visit planets, I can go around stars. And I was like, holy shit, dude. Like, I thought I was hardcore with 5 grams of mushrooms. This motherfucker's intermuscular injecting ketamine.
Ketamine really
gives
a separation of like, especially, I mean, some of the ladies yesterday did have out-of-body experiences. Some of them, who are more psychonauts will probably want to move forward with an intramuscular just to experience that real, true out-of-body experience. I can't say that I've done a lot of psychedelics, and ketamine is just very different. And yet I would consider it psychedelic.
Any assistance you would suggest for the come out? The one thing I didn't like, I only did it once, and it was intermuscular. Dr. Lily's assistant gave it to me. I hated the come out. It took so long because I guess of the dosage. We're given 1/10 of what they give a child for surgery, I guess was what was administered. Is there any suggestion for the come out of that? Because it took so long. It just was very uncomfortable.
Yeah. Did you take any Zofran or any type of anti-nausea with it?
No. We all got nauseous during it, and it was about.
Oh yeah, no. I always keep so I always keep some Zofran on me. Just a dissolvable tablet of it. In our office, we give dissolvable tablets, and we also do inject, especially if someone's on their journey and they're starting to get really nauseous, we'll give them an injection, and it helps dramatically.
I found that what ketamine reminded me the most of was PCP.
It's exactly like this, that, and the other. And well, I suppose it can be at times, but it's very much, on its own at times, I think, in terms of a chemical. But I agree, my first time taking it, I concur with Sam. It was pretty heavy. It was just too heavy. But the next few times was much more manageable because of the, it was just a lower dose. It was more accurate. It wasn't
And with me, it
here,
wasn't
try
because
this, like
it wasn't because it was too strong. That was not. I mean, I've taken STP for God's sakes, and but the it's just a really different high than what I consider psychedelics. Like
I agree.
LSD, DMT, all of these type of drugs, mescaline, psilocybin, they're absolutely true psychedelics without anybody's doubt. Whereas I have my doubts about ketamine. Do you think that people are actually experiencing what they think they're experiencing, or do you think it's all just an illusion as a result of their ego death? Do you have an opinion?
I do have an opinion. I think that they really are experiencing what they're experiencing in their mind. Um, uh, and I think that it takes them into the other reality, the other realm, wherever that might be. And there's enough people and studies that show that with that ego death, that they're inside their unconscious mind. But I hear what you're saying, Sam. I hear what you're saying. If we were able in our office to use true psychedelic, plant medicine, we would be using it, and we're trying, but we have to start somewhere. And because ketamine does have psychedelic properties and it does show the healing properties of for people with trauma and mental illness who are seeking relief, we have to start somewhere. So that's kind of our gateway into psychedelic assisted therapy above board.
I always called ketamine the Cadillac of PCPs.
Well, it's interesting. I hear what you guys were saying. Like, I remember in my 20s taking it at a club in Miami, and people were like, don't take too much because you don't want to end up in a K-hole. And I remember it was really heavy. Like, I felt like, like my legs were disconnected from the floor. And, but now, as I'm older and I take it for like a therapeutic purpose, I'm actually wanting to be in that K-hole. And I want to go and delve into my mind. I also
so angel dust, right? Phencyclidine was always like sprinkled on bowls, or there was always the rumor about weed that was laced with phencyclidine. And
you like to get wet,
Sure. The late 80s.
Yeah, I just always fretted that if you look at the compound itself, or just the structure of the compound, that it's not going to be thermally stable, and it's going to degrade, right? Versus vaporizing. So the cannabinoids, when you heat them up, they vaporize, but these things contain nitrogens, and when you heat up compounds that contain nitrogens, they often degrade. That's why all the psychedelics normally, like the phenethylamines, are
are just water soluble, and they're ingested, and you don't necessarily need to smoke stuff. And I just remember people like getting all spaced out because they were sprinkling white powder on their bowls, and I'm like, oh no, don't do that. Just didn't seem right.
Yeah, but you don't have to do it that way. You can turn PCP into a base and use ethanol to soak it into any herb.
Yeah, like the sophisticated deadheads who used to drop. So I remember ketamine on Grateful Dead tour in the early 90s, and I remember specifically people who enjoyed taking it in the second set of the Dead show. There was always something called Drums in Space, and it got really spacey. Like they went into their percussion solos, and there were just lights. It was like the most psychedelically intense part of the show. And that's when people busted out the K. And usually it was like an Afrin spray bottle, like a nasal spray, and they'd take it, and you'd see people like they'd be like this, and then they'd be like that, and then you know what they were doing. And then like
Mark, can you actually smoke or vaporize ketamine? I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I don't know, Sam. I just, when I look at the chemical structure of those are related. So phencyclidine and ketamine are not phenethylamines, but they're so they're not like L-dopa, and they're not like amphetamines. They're actually benzylamines, and they're different in that they have just a different set of chemistry. They hit, I think, Allison, don't they hit the NDMA receptor and methyl diaspartic acid receptor, which has peripheral impact on the whole central nervous system, which is why they use these things as animal tranquilizers.
I just wanted to say that I was young and stupid, and I'm not recommending anybody smoke angel dust PCP. I don't believe there's any redeeming factor in it whatsoever.
Well,
that's just too much of a disassociative. It's
yeah. So I saw this news blurb where that guy Marcus Rogan up in BC, his little R&D thing, is going to start looking at vape smart. Like he's got like some kind of GC set up that they're going to actually pull air through vapes to actually quantitate different types of impurities and whatnot. You think they'd want to try that, like put little bit of PCP like on some herb, burn it or something, and see like really what comes off. Because I always thought, just looking at the structure, I'm like, man, those things are going to degrade as soon as they heat up. So all those people who were smoking PCP laced weed, again, I think it has a lot to do with the same thing that people who smoke that synthetic spice. If you look at that compound, unlike cannabinoids, is got a nitrogen in it. And when those nitrogen compounds heat up, they thermally eliminate through something called a cope I'm sorry, let's see, what is the name of that degradation? It's called Hoffman degradation. Hoffman degradations happen with nitrogen containing compounds. When you heat them up, can't keep it from happening. You heat up nitrogen compounds in the presence of air, they degrade to these really toxic compounds called nitroso and nitrosamine compounds, some of the most toxic shit we know in mankind. So I mean, like that's what those people were all freaked out seeing Jesus on back in the day when they were sprinkling that shit on their bowls. It's funny because again, I think they thought that wow, that's really potent. It's like, dude, you're probably smoking all kinds of toxic degradation products and not even knowing what you're getting. I don't think you can smoke it, to answer your question.
No clinical trials were ever done on any of the Huffman compounds. He invented, I don't know, maybe 100 of them. And yeah.
That's right. But you bring up a good point, Sam. So I think most of these, because they're water soluble, you can make just a spray, an intranasal spray, just take a couple hits and you're good,
Man, Mark, when you start with these like science, experiments so early in the morning, I'm like, wow, I just get.
Hey, it's noon out east.
I get hazy. I love it.
I have a question.
I got a whole 6 hours to be thinking about shit, man.
Go ahead, Colin.
In the
I have a
middle of my
question.
day.
You know, since we're talking about compounds, and as a young buck, when I was really into Aldous Huxley and reading more about what they were up to and his whole crew, I read about AMT, right? And I took it, and when I read about it, he described it as the Rolls Royce of LSD. And I wanted to just ask the question, you know, Allison, what's your take on that? And Sam and everyone in the room, as a chemical, what's going on there? And can anyone shed any light on that? If it really is the Rolls Royce,
I didn't hear what compound you were
What's
talking
the
about.
compound?
Sorry.
AMT.
AMT, not DMT?
No, AMT.
I'm not familiar with AMT.
I'm not
So-
familiar with it, and I thought I had taken everything.
Well, maybe I'm the only one. It's
Or
extremely
maybe
long.
You got the initials wrong or something. What does it stand for? AMT.
Hold on, let's look it up.
Google.
Yeah.
We're gonna
So
do
this
some
was
Google
an
research.
So
Alpha
alpha
methyltryptamine.
methyltryptamine.
Okay.
It was described by Aldous Huxley as the Rolls Royce of LSD, and at a time in my life, I was very much learning about myself.
Okay,
and,
so what you're saying is instead of dimethyltryptamine, DMT,
Right.
it's alpha methyltryptamine. No,
Right.
I've never heard of it. I've had some of the other tryptamines, in other words, like DET. But
Yeah.
I've never seen a
Yeah, and
No,
It was-
neither have I, but now I want to try it.
It was very, very intense and long, and I've taken it more than a few times, and I just, I've had a couple times with a close friend of mine, and we'd make music on this stuff, and I just remember him looking at me being like, "Is this forever?" At one point, because it was so long, abnormally long.
When you smoke it, does it smell and taste better than DMT, which smells like burning plastic or burning metal?
So the way that we did it, this was not controlled. It was not controlled at the time when we were getting this stuff. So we would really study the dosage, and we would get it and make pills out of it and take it that way. And the onset was a much cleaner version of a cleaner onset than I'd ever seen from any other substance like this. And it was a very clear, almost unbelievably psychedelic experience, but you're very cognitive and you're riding that line of like surrealism.
And you say it lasted a long time because DMT, if you smoke it, it doesn't last 15 minutes. I mean, it's really fast.
Right. This is like huge peaks and valleys and very expansive. I started to understand what Aldous Huxley was talking about immediately in the middle of it. I was like, wow, this guy really knows what's up. At the time, it was really incredible, but I haven't heard much about it since. I don't really hear people talk about it. I went through a phase of my life where I was really into these compounds and started. There was a time when you could just order this stuff. I mean, there was a time when you could order DMT and 5-MeO and all these other compounds. And it was a very interesting point in my life, but I think it was just curious. I was just very curious. I don't really hear much about it, but it was it truly was like, sitting in that Rolls Royce, if you will. I started to understand it.
So if DMT is the working man psychedelic, what would you call this one, Colin? The serious overtime?
It's just like well, it's like my buddy Dan said, it was like, this seems abnormally long. So that's all it was so long ago, guys. It was like 20, almost 15.
Were you able to actually access time to know if it was an hour, 2 hours, 5 hours?
That's the thing. You would be so out of sync with time, and then you'd be, you come in and out of these peaks and valleys, if you will, whatever analogy we're going to use, and you would just be like, wow, it's like, what time is it? Like, so that's what I do remember of it, but it's been quite some time since I've revisited this part of my journey. But yeah, I just, I read about it. Aldous Huxley was someone I was reading a lot about at the time, and him and his whole crew just talked about it like, hey, this is the Rolls Royce of LSD. And I just, that analogy always stuck with me. And, so that's why I asked.
Thanks for sharing. I'd never heard about that.
Yeah. Cool. Sweet. Yeah,
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's in TCAL, and he's got a prep for it. So those chemists who want to be out there and be cowboys, you could actually make it if you want from tryptamine. So it has that alpha methyl group, which is similar to NDMA, right? Which has got an alpha methyl group too as well. So
well, it reminded me of ANT. It reminded me of MDMA when the onset is very much like that. But it reminds me of, it was like this hybrid of all these things. And I started to understand why they were talking about it in that light. Because you're like, wow, the onset's amazing. Wow, this is amazing. Like, it just, like, all the blocks fit. There wasn't like, like when you eat mushrooms, your body's like, what are you doing to yourself? There's this moment of this push and pull. And that I never experienced that with this. So.
Well, I always like DMT because when you take a big inhalation of it before you let it out, you're already on the top of the rocket going a million miles an hour.
Well said.
It tastes like shit.
Well, that's my question for the chemical question for the day.
I did try ketamine because when I was told it was a horse tranquilizer and it might help with pain. And then when Allison was talking about how it felt disconnected, I felt like I was on the floor and I couldn't move. And I was moving at like a turtle speed minus, like I couldn't even do anything. So I thought, like, how can I function using this in life? So hence hash is the go-to for me. But
I would tell you use smaller amounts, Johnny B.
yeah, I'm just curious because everybody's been talking even about with psychedelics.
We utilize ketamine for chronic pain in our clinic, and we use what's called like troches or lozenges. And I usually work with them. I mean, of course, it's Dr. Agarwal who's the one that prescribes it and tells them what to take. But I work with them on a weekly basis to make sure that like you're on the right track. And we usually start with a quarter of a troche. So that would be like maybe 25 milligrams.
I'm curious now because I've always taken lots of mushrooms and then like a reset, but I've never done micros, and I've always done excessive amounts of different drugs to try and see if it would help me, but I've never done small amounts where I can't feel it. So now I'm kind of reassessing things by listening to people on Clubhouse and talking here. I'm kind of in this whole new, I take 250 milligram caps like 3 times a day, and my points are getting that I'm taking too much. So I'm trying to I've taken like resets on days where I don't like do dabs or smoke weed for the whole day now. I've been doing this every month and stuff like that, trying to find things that are going to work more. So I'm kind of curious about this next step of being able to deal with chronic pain. So this is great conversation.
I'm going to say, can you hear me? I'm going to say that if you're using plant medicine and you're able to get it to work for you, I would use plant medicine until you max out on plant medicine. And then let's talk about adding ketamine if plant medicine no longer works for you. But you have options now, even with psilocybin can also help with pain.
Yeah, I was actually.
How's it going? I was going to welcome Josh into the room. I saw him just kind of sneak in there. How's it going, buddy?
Very good. Happy Valentine's Day to everyone. And my lovely Valentine will probably be down here in a little bit. And wonderful conversation this morning. So good morning.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Thanks,
Happy love to you all.
Happy V-Day to everybody.
I will be taking my wife for a romantic walk in the forest later tonight, up and through the trees and the snow. That's my Valentine's Day plan. I'm not buying cards and flowers and candies and chocolate and teddy bears and all that sort of, pardon my French bullshit, but I am going to spend time with her and appreciate our vibes and do it in nature.
My wife and I are going out to a fancy restaurant at the drive-through at In-N-Out tonight. So, the type of in-service dining that I can accompany me during this COVID.
Yeah, buddy.
That's awesome. That is awesome. My partner, he gave me the freedom to be with my ladies for this weekend as my Valentine's Day, and he's out with his men friends all camping. And yeah, we just try to express love every day rather than one day of the year.
One day we're gonna have to have our wives do an episode of Hash Church and not any of us, and just have our wives on here. I think that would be absolutely spectacular. Just telling stories, amazing. Talking shit about us. Kelly could moderate it because she's always here.
And the women that are on Hash Church, do they bring their husbands?
I mean, why not? It'd be pretty, I think it would just be a fun thing one day. Like, has anyone ever seen my wife, Etienne's wife, Dr. Park's wife, like Colin's wife? Like, no. Sam, I bet you your lady would like to come on Hash Church and bust out a few old Sam stories.
She'd be talking about herbalism the whole time and how I, pack too many balls.
You've been with your wife since high school, haven't you? Like when you guys first dated, and you guys been together ever since. You guys have quite a love story, actually. You should tell
Dude,
us.
I think Sam is in the same boat. I mean, I've seen his pictures of him and his wife. They were kids.
53 years.
53 years.
That's awesome.
Congratulations for her being able to put up with you that long.
Seriously, what a
53 years.
It will be 53 years. It's 52 right now.
That's beautiful, Sam.
What about Wade? Nice. How about Wade and Monica?
She the skunk
woman. Well, here's to you guys and Adele.
31 here.
Yeah, I'm 31 as well. I'm
Since
31 as well.
Grateful Dead tour, really 1990.
Cool, 1989. I guess I'm 32.
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. You guys have had long-term relationships.
Had a long-term relationship.
If you can't tell, Allison, most of the guys on this panel are extremely committed.
They are committed.
Regardless of what they are committed to, they're just committed. We should all be committed, in fact.
Whether it's hash or marriages or relationships, I love it.
Or straight jackets.
I was with my wife for 9 years before we tied the old knotter, and we've been together for a really long time, like almost 2 decades.
You have to know when you're content, right? Isn't that like one of the secrets of life? Like really separating happiness from being content. Like everything in life is just a matter of choices, and so yeah,
and balance. I've been
right.
talking
You
about
have the choice of being.
Lately.
You have the choice of being right or being happy. Choose appropriately.
Right. You have to make compromises, and if you're smart, you have some idea of what life is going to be with that person in 5 or 10 years. I mean, at least. Otherwise, yeah, in America, marriage is just another throwaway consumer item, unfortunately. More than half the people who marry get divorced.
Did you know people who got married where one of the partners consumed and the other one did not, and those marriages never lasted, right? I mean, so really,
want to make a bet?
Well, so that I'm asking that, I guess.
I was just about to say the
Sam,
same thing, man.
Your wife
was
my wife does not puff. If she was to puff, she would puff CBD to go to sleep. She does not smoke.
That's like my wife.
My wife puffs tough.
She loves CBD, but does not. Just at this age, she's not into Delta 9 or THCA.
My ex-wife.
Let me rephrase that. So, like the marriages where one was pro and the other was not against or totally against. So those marriages never. I know several marriages where weed consumption was basically the reason why the marriage ended.
Sure.
My original marriage, which I got married at the Cannabis Cup in Amsterdam.
Dude.
We were both proponents of cannabis, but after we were married a few years, she stopped and we grew apart. And yeah, it was a problem for us, and it didn't get any better until we finally divorced.
I think
And
alcohol would be number one in that. I don't think we should be talking about cannabis. We should talk about how alcohol ruins relationships. But I think cannabis saves relationships, in my opinion.
I agree. But you know what? I don't think I could be with anyone who didn't use cannabis. I've tried and it just doesn't work.
Doesn't work.
Well, you know
right?
what's neat about that is that people use cannabis differently now. So you can use cannabis by eating essential amino acid rich seed oil. You can wear hemp clothing. You can take CBD. You don't have to be getting high to be using cannabis. So there's, like my wife does all three of those things that I just mentioned, but she has no interest in smoking cannabis to alter her consciousness with THC. She's a little sensitive to the THC, but she enjoys all of the other things. So I guess in that sense,
That's
we both
great.
still enjoy
You have
cannabis.
someone that supports you, Marcus. But
Yeah.
when like I call them like a square, when like you need a square and they find out you use between 2 and 5 grams a day, to them that is like, whoa, you got a problem. Oh, you smoke too much, or and that doesn't work.
Absolutely. I was talking about this recently with my wife in regards to how, we celebrate our celebrations and our successes, but we don't really celebrate the hard road and the things that define us to becoming who we are, because my successes do not define me. It's my failures. It's my difficult road that I took. It's all the bad pictures I took that create the good ones that I take. And so that is a mentality I wish human beings had a little bit more. Like we love to promote the podium and the pedestal, but we don't really promote the whole difficult, hard, gnarly road that it takes to get there. And I think sometimes, manifesting, that experience where you're like a user and the other person is not a user is all part of that defining, who you are.
I think it's interesting that a lot of us have been in long-term relationships, and even like our son Sky and then Sierra, they've been together for almost 10 years now, and they're 24 years old. And I just think it is a good quality that we have. How long have you been together with Monica?
We're coming on 20 years now. Yeah, I had a previous marriage with the mother of my children. And she and I have managed to maintain being good friends, but we came to understand we just couldn't live with each other. And that was the mother of my children. And yeah, since you called me out, I wanted to jump in here and say, all this conversation about psychedelics and all of the alphabet soup of various compounds that induce this psychedelic experience. I personally, not that it really matters, but I personally only have experienced with LSD and mushrooms and cactus. And yeah, they were all quite different, but the central point that we keep making reference to has to do with ego death. And I would just look at each of us in turn who have experienced these psychedelics, and I don't think any of us have a shortage of ego. Our egos are still present. It's just that we've come to realize that all of this three-dimensional reality that we live in is just a construct. And I really haven't imbibed in psychedelics in probably as long as I've known Monica. We actually recently sourced some high quality LSD that we're considering sharing that experience together. But for years, I have tried to remember what the psychedelic experience taught me and build that experience in my head through, I suppose you could call it meditation, or just really what I do is spend a lot of time looking at nature and things that are happening in the garden and around us on the farm. and trying to see where I fit into that and where humans fit into it and how we can work together with what we have to make this world a little sweeter place. And so I really want to encourage and recommend to people who have not tried the psychedelic experience to do that, because it's a dramatically quick way to understand the illusion that makes our world seem so real, and to recognize the true essence of who you are as a human being and what the opportunity for that life is. It just seems important to recognize that all of these drugs, including psychedelics, really only help us glimpse the truth. They don't help us live it. And you have to do that work of living what's real for yourself. Drugs can help us see that. And that's true about cannabis as well. I mean, you know, I'm a missionary about cannabis and its potential benefits for humans. But what's true is it's an aid. Just like in healing, one of my favorite analogies about healing is that just like healing can happen in a hospital or as a result of taking some prescription drug, what's really true about healing is it comes from within ourselves. Our bodies heal themselves. And in that same way, spirit can happen in a church or a temple or a mosque, but it really comes from within us. It's our experience of spirit that is real. It's not the church itself. So sorry to heavy up on you on a Sunday morning, but there's
Amen. No,
where
we're in
Wade's
church.
at.
Amen, Wade. I love you can talk all day long from
This is church. We got to get
It's beautiful.
biblical, man. Thank you.
I appreciate
Well
that
said,
too.
man.
We consider it an essential thing on our property. Did you want to say something else, Wade?
Just that I feel such a deep respect for this group of people and the platform that Marcus has created and the way that each of us is willing to be who you are and feel welcomed while doing so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Totally. Well put. Someone in the chat just said, Wade's voice just lifts away all anxiety. I would suspect that, Allison, if you're using ketamine currently to walk people through their journeys, you might want to look into using Wade's voice for some of the integration, because, man, it's all just rings true and it's all love and kind. Someone said it the other day, Wade comes out and opens his mouth and just showers everyone with love and gold nuggets. And I just
you know what, that's
appreciate
really
Wade.
funny. As I'm sitting here, I'm waiting for my coffee or whatever, I shared with one of the ladies that, like, you know, about Wade and how beautiful his words come out and how it's easy to be drawn because it's just everything is with love and positivity.
He
He
has a
always waits for
warmth.
his spot.
Soothing.
Sorry, go ahead.
He has a warmth about him when he speaks, but it comes from a well of knowledge. It isn't just spouting anything. You can hear the wealth of knowledge and the depth of the person within. It is, I would recommend having him narrate anything you need.
To tell you the
Hey,
truth,
you're a true sage, man.
Ken, to tell you the truth, I patented all of that knowledge, so I actually own it. And if anybody wants to use Wade's knowledge, they have to pay me royalties.
Thank you, Sam.
That's the only way.
Do you take royalties in hash?
I'll take good karma.
That's it.
I just had someone ask that I would go on my podcast mic, so hopefully that sounds a little better. I've turned off the AirPods and I've turned on the Raspberry microphone.
Yeah, you don't sound like you're in a tin can.
Excellent. Well, I should have known that earlier. Thanks for mentioning that, BDNF guy. I'm on my good mic now.
Looks
I
like
have a
Dutch
question,
Blue
Marcus.
came in.
I
Yeah,
just
let's
have a
welcome
Go ahead.
Josh.
What are you smoking on right now, man?
Hey guys, how are you guys doing?
Dude, you're rolling it up.
Yeah, man. I'm loving the conversation. You guys are getting more into the psychedelics like every week. It's awesome, man. I have a little I take microdosing almost 3, 4, 5 times a week of psilocybin, and I've had a few journeys, but I don't go too much past that. Acid a few times, but the microdose with the psilocybin really is something that's proven really beneficial to me. To like usually I use it when I'm really tired, and I don't have as much patience within myself to be kind. And I take the psilocybin, and it just gives me that empathy and that understanding of kind of where I am in the scene. And so it's been a good practice.
It seems to be that empathy does not lie in the ego.
Yeah.
Welcome, Josh. Hey, Etienne, I have a message for you. AC says to tell you hi.
I love him.
She said to tell you she loves you.
Much love and great respect.
Much love and great respect, she said.
I don't get any hellos from AC.
Oh, and now Marcus is upset, AC, because you didn't.
I love Marcus too.
She said she loves you too.
We'll just say hi to AC from the Dragonfly.
Dragonfly, Josh from Dragonfly Earth is hi.
Is what?
You guys are in my ear, so she can't actually hear you. She hears me talking to you, but she can't actually hear you. So hold on, I'm going to take my earbud out and let her
I would
hear.
just say,
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How is everybody?
Good morning.
Great, AC. Good to hear from you. How was your psychedelic trips yesterday?
Oh, it was fantastic. It was fantastic. And and then there's tonight now.
Rinse, lather, repeat, huh?
Yeah. Well, I had never done a ketamine session like that before, and it was really different, and it was very, very interesting. And we had one gal who never quite made the connection between psychedelics and medicine and healing, and she made that connection yesterday. So that was awesome.
Give thanks. That's a beautiful thing, and that's all part of the connection that we need in this time, in this difficult time that often wants to connect us from the sacred and disconnect us from our self-empowered place. And I think
That's right.
psychedelic breaks that chain, right? Just like the mycelium, just like the roots, just like fungi as a whole breaks rules. There's no rules in fungi. And also psychedelics follow that line. So I think it's part of that, just breaking the programming. We're in like an everyday programming of news and food and medicine and all this stuff. And I think it takes the power of something like psychedelics and all the different forms to truly break that chain and show us what's important, which a lot of times resides in the heart. And
Yeah, absolutely. My intention going in was something a little different, but where it took me was all about connection. Everything you're just saying. We have lost our connection to so many things and each other. And this is a good way to get it back. If only everyone would do it.
It's funny that bands
work.
It's funny, like bands like the Grateful Dead and Fish and some other bands have kind of figured this out, that there's different ways to get connections, and plant medicines are definitely on the list. The experiences I had, particularly at Fish shows, certainly weren't alcohol influenced. They seemed to be psychedelic influence, like lots of people just not only looking to connect through the set and setting, which is the show, but also that parking lot vibe, and just, like people just looking for that so desperately. I mean, people followed that band around for 30 plus years for a reason, like not just because there was a hole, there was something missing. And when you go on tour, I felt it myself. I felt like that hole got filled. I was like, oh my God, these are my people. Like there's so many like-minded people. I can have so many amazing conversations and experiences, and I can do it while Fish is melting my brain with a beautiful split open and melt jam.
And there's all the kindness that surrounds it, the kindness, the creativity, and just openness to actually meet other people and make those kinds of connections.
And for us who didn't have access to the drugs or the scenes, I mean, we heard about the scene, and that's what drove me to Shakedown Street was, dude, they've got every drug available. There's people walking around with mushrooms, and I'll be damned if some guy isn't walking around with a 25-gram amanita going, mushrooms, mushrooms, you know.
Don't forget your
It was
kind of
also
guy, right?
Two balls with armpit hairs in them. Oh, yeah.
Your veggie burritos and your Guatemalan shorts and your tie-dye t-shirts and your jewelry and yeah, just anything that you need to look like a hippie. It was
it was
great, man.
also a
Fucking
time to
traveling
meet
circus.
spiritual people.
I started at the age of 14 seeing those guys, and it was just, yeah, I was like, whoa, man. You know, and living in northern New Jersey, it was easy growing up in the late 70s, early 80s to go see the Grateful Dead by just traveling like a 2-hour circle in and around New York City. You could literally see hundreds of shows and not have to travel too far. But there was like a spirit of adventure because you didn't always have tickets, right? And you're like driving, and it was before cell phones, so you're unable to hook up with people until you got there. And unlike today, it wasn't broadcasted to the world. So to be there to witness the magic, you had to be in the building. You needed a little ticket that got you into the building. And if you were lucky, like with Dead and Mark will remember with Fish, you actually got a tape of the show like the next day. And you're listening to the show that you just saw that just blew your mind. And now you have it on tape for the rest of your life. It was just such an incredible adventure to live, and Fish had this incredible crescendo after Garcia died in '95. I think they were certainly the heirs apparent for like the next traveling circus, the next large traveling circus. They already had an incredible body of music, and they were being incredibly creative at the time. And just like the Dead, they weren't the commercial success, but they let people tour and they let people tape, and that whole Shakedown Street, like when the Fish show rolled into town, it was just like the Dead. They needed to give them their own parking lot. There were campers, there were teepees, there were just all kinds of just this traveling circus that would travel around, and that was part of the culture of the music. And you hit it on the head, Mark. It was really unique because if you went to like, I don't know, like an Allman Brothers show or Neil Young, there was never a traveling circus associated with any other band. I mean, I guess on the jam band, maybe at a much lower level, some of the bands had it, but you know, Fish had this sort of crescendo all the way up to the Millennium. And when they played their show at Big Cypress in the Everglades, it was the largest gathering on the planet for the Millennium. The largest gathering was the Fish show that I was at, along with my lovely wife and a bunch of my friends. And it was incredible because they played from midnight all throughout the night. All
7.5 hours.
Yeah.
How many people?
I think was like 85,000 people, Marcus. I can't remember.
It was a big one. I wasn't at Seminole, but I had bubble bags there and I had friends there. And Marcel brought the Fish 2000 bubbler there,
Yeah.
which was like at the time a $10,000 pipe that he like literally said he lit and he passed, and then he didn't see it for hours, and he would just catch glimpses of it moving around the place. And then at the end of the day at night, it kind of came back to him. But that Cross-Eyed and Painless that they did, oh my God, man, that Cross-Eyed and Painless from Seminole Indian Reservation, Big Cypress was pretty much my favorite version of that song.
It was just incredible to witness the sun coming up that day, Marcus, was just incredible. It was like Velvet Sea was right at sunrise, and you're just there, and you're spent, but you're in this new, millennium. And remember, everyone thought like computers were going to take over the world, or computers were going to crash or something. But there's actually a famous YouTube or a clip up on YouTube that shows the late Peter Jennings, who was, I guess, hosting ABC's Rockin' the Millennium New Year's. And they actually cut to Fish, and they do Heavy Things. And yeah, it was really surreal to be there. But the reason why I was mentioning that is it seemed like that was kind of like a crescendo that was hit. And then after that, it was just like like, what do we do? Like, what can we do that would possibly top that? Like, they
Yeah,
couldn't.
like
There's
there's like Miles
always a way
Davis
to top
after
it.
he wrote Sketches of Spain, you know, like musically it was like the pinnacle for him. Like he just
Right.
couldn't.
Where do you go next?
He was like, where do I go from here? You know what I mean? But then he came back and writ Bitches Brew at 42 years old and changed, again, changed music, changed the world in which we perceive, you know.
Well,
I didn't
imagine
see
being the Grateful
Miles
Dead
near the
and
end.
playing 100,000 person event in 1973 at Watkins Glen in New Jersey. Like after 1973, you'd think, oh shit, how are we going to go bigger than that? And next thing you know, you make the Wall of Sound, which is 89,000 watt system with every single string on its own channel, and Owsley just coming out of jail to create the largest sound system that's ever been known to mankind. So I'm pretty sure humans are capable of creating the new best thing, and I'm just thankful for that creativity. I would also just add to the psychedelic lore that barter fairs were really important back in the day too.
When I think to that year, 1974, which I call buttery soft Grateful Dead, is like 74 to 76. It was so good. They sounded so great. They were so on their game. Really? You think we could create that again now? I mean, even when you listen to all of the music back then, Steely Dan, all the Motown, all the R&B stuff that was happening in the 70s, dude, the 70s will never be able to. I don't think music will ever be like that again, again.
It'll be different.
George Clinton in the 70s.
It seemed to just get distorted to the point where now somebody, doesn't do a studio release or a record. They do some recording on TikTok, and next thing you know, they're the next, international sensation. I mean, I think what we witnessed in like the 70s and the 80s, I mean, that groovy music, when you go back and listen to that, I mean, all that great, good Steely Dan and all that great stuff, even like through the 80s with like bands like Los Lobos. I mean, we'll never see that level of creativity and really goodness in music again.
Well, that's what they said about Sabbath and Zeppelin and the Beatles and the Stones and all these incredible bands. But the bottom line is we will. It's a guarantee. If you want to be like musically blown away, like truly, like not so much the music, but lyrics. Like I've been tripping on this guy, Harry Mack, lately. I can't even say enough about him. This guy does live freestyles. He writes entire songs from the top of his head in an instant with 3 words that get given to him. And he's doing it on YouTube. He's doing it on Omegle. It's very, very different from what you're talking about, but it goes to show that there are things that have never existed that are just starting to exist. And if that can exist, then something else can exist, in the future. And I have faith that human beings are only going to get tastier and better. And I mean, when I saw this young rock band that came out, I'm probably going to forget their name, but they sounded so much like Zeppelin and Rush. Have you heard these young kids?
Yeah, I can't remember who you're talking. And then also like Kevin Parker from Tame Impala. That kid's a killer songwriter. I mean, it's newer, but I mean, he's got a lot of creativity with his guitar pedals, and he's a baller. I mean, he knows what he's doing. And, I agree. I think music in different ways is going to reshape the future. And look, we were touching about the wall of sound. I mean, think about it. I don't know if many people realize this. Like the reason we have noise canceling microphones is literally because of the wall of sound. Like in terms of live music, the wall of sound was the beginning of where we're at. Like that was live. They were the first band to really think about the live experience in terms of what do I experience in the studio is not being experienced to the crowd, and how do we translate that? And the wall of sound really took those ideologies, and they used their brains and their passion to get us where we're at today with festivals. I mean, before we had any of this stuff, we had just terrible sound, and I don't we don't realize that. But
Colin, that was due to Owsley.
I know, but it was working with the band, you know what I mean? Like, and then working with Macintosh in upstate New York to actually design the drivers to amplify everything correctly. I mean, It's incredible.
And the whole entire creation of selling the whole entire population LSD on top of it all really helps.
Seriously.
It really helps.
Well, and a Steal Your Face logo, as well as the buckles, because the first thing he tried to do was sell me a buckle when I met him. He's like, "Hey, you want a buckle?"
Of course.
That, man.
But you know, there's still
Remember-
musical geniuses out there. I mean, go check out this piano player, Hiromi. I mean, she is absolutely amazing. As you know, there's prodigies and those amazing, you know, jazz players that are still rising with each generation. So, you know, it's also about staying plugged in and looking and listening, because I think, what is it? The average person stops listening to new music at the age of 32. So, you know, you have to always be, you know, reaching out. I know it sounds weird, but if you go look at psychology, a lot of people cut off their music around 32, 33, and everything below that for their generations they listen to. So it's just, you know, it's also about plugging in and checking in, because there's still amazing musicianship out there that will raise the level. We're starting to see rock music just starting to make a comeback. So step by step.
That was Greta Van Fleet was the band's name.
Greta, and those kids rip. I mean, and while we're on the topic of jazz, we lost an absolute visionary this past week, Chick Corea. I mean, you want to talk about an innovator. This guy was the first person to take an electric piano with Herbie Hancock and really incorporate that into jazz. I mean, sounds like a small feat, but that's literally like Dylan plugging his guitar in for the first time.
Yeah, Hiromi did a jam with actual Chick Corea.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, Chick is a major inspiration to me, and we lost a legend. I mean,
but what will be like that again? You know, like that's what I'm kind of like. If you look at the change in popular music that happened in the 3 decades between the 1930s and the 1960s, and then you look at like the 3 decades like that have unfolded since today, there's hardly any change, right? And I'll agree with what ATN said, is that there are incredibly talented musicians out there. One of my current favorites right now is none other than William Apostle, aka Billy Strings. Billy Strings is just, you know, Doc Watson reincarnated, Doc Watson and Clarence White reincarnated. And if you don't know who those people are, look them up. Again, he is a true bluegrass player through and through, but can shred anything. And he's just an incredible talent. But it's Bill Monroe bluegrass, which, you know, was invented back in the, 30s and 40s. So I'm just wondering, like, what's next? What's the next big thing that's going to erupt?
Well, they're talking about Zappa in the chat room. You know, there's Zappa's long gone, yet I seen Dweezil Zappa play Zappa. Zappa plays Zappa a few years ago, and that shit tore my head off. I sat in the front row, absolutely flabbergasted at the quality of his ability to play the guitar, but also the ability to pull people from Frank's groups into his group, and just everything was so on point that I have an appreciation for that as well.
Always Frank Zappa.
That movie that's out there right now, Marcus?
Which one?
The Zappa movie that's out there. There's a documentary on Frank Zappa.
I'm not sure. I've seen a few, but is it like a new one?
I think it's on
Netflix.
Is it on Netflix? Did you see it, Sam?
Yes, I've seen it.
Yeah, I've seen that too, Mark. It's a really good one. Rupert Neve passed away. I mean, Rupert Neve is responsible for pretty much every record in existence that's been recorded if they were in any major studio. His, the Neve console was a mixing board that had very specific components that allowed a very dynamic richness to be captured through microphones, and he was a major contributor behind the curtain to a lot of the favorite records that we all listen to.
Yeah, the first Wall of Sound was actually put together in studios by Phil Spector.
Oh, no way. That's interesting. I didn't realize that.
Oh, Phil Spector, who just recently died.
That's right.
In prison.
And all his kookiness.
Well, he sort of went Looney Tunes at the end.
You think?
Sort of. You mean
You
right
think?
before he murdered his wife, or?
How many people did he actually murder, though? Because he only got caught for one.
Seriously.
He
Hey,
was
how about
brilliant.
how about a shout out to Stevie Ray Vaughan if we're going to talk about genius musicians? You know,
I got to catch him. I got to catch him.
I saw him and
Hey,
his
Kelly.
brother jam together on the Riverboat President on the same guitar. That was one was a short neck, the other was a long neck, and they ripped that shit apart, man. The whole place was just jaw dropped everywhere.
Wow.
I was gonna say a lot of it is access and access to media and access to create media. It's totally changed from the era of the 70s and the 80s and even the 90s, where every iPhone and iPad you get has a sound engineer system in it. You know, GarageBand, we could all create fucking epic music right now, right there. And then we can also put it out really easy with a couple of clicks. I could put it on iTunes and it's available. And that has like spread out the interest and who's listening to what. And so I think a lot more people are listening to a lot more diverse music. And there's a lot of people kicking ass right now, and it's really interesting. And there's a lot of influences that are being melded. And man, I just, that's just kind of what I was thinking when I was hearing all that. And like, cause I listened to all the great stuff too in high school. I was listening to the 70s bands and fucking rocking out and thinking, man, that was the era of music. People were really melding sound and the guitars were ripping, and that's what we kind of modeled our music after. But then it changed, because we had influence from the stuff of our time, and
well, music has changed.
Yeah, the stuff that's coming out right now, I kind of think is mimicking the 80s, the synth 80s stuff. And I kind of love it, but it's muddled with hip hop and beats that are different than we had in the 80s, that's really cool.
You got people being exposed to music that weren't being exposed to music. So YouTube has this entire culture of reaction videos where you have people who have never heard of these bands getting suggestions through their YouTube comments to go on and, oh, you got to hear Texas Flood by Stevie Ray Vaughan. If you've never heard and seen that, you just won't believe it. And I've been watching all sorts of these reaction videos because it's just like really unique people from where they could be from like the inner city of Chicago or Baltimore. And they're just like, hey, what's up? I'm a YouTube reaction guy. Stevie Knight is one of the guys I watch that I really like. He's a big kind of muscle dude. And he's always,
you gotta watch Jamal, Mark.
Is Kelly talking? I wanted to make sure I wasn't talking. Yeah, Jamal. I watched Jamal. Jamal's amazing.
He's funny. He's from South Central LA.
I wanted to tell you a story really quick. I got to see Frank Zappa in Chicago in 1988, and we were out. It was like in the middle of summertime, so it was a Bears show, and I had traded a bag of weed to this guy. He said, "Hey, I'm gonna give you a ticket. You got to go see this show. It's after hours. It doesn't start till midnight." And, the guy's name is Frank Zappa. I was like, I don't even know who that is. I really didn't even know who Frank Zappa was in 1988. I didn't know who he was. So I went into this little underground bar and they were handing everybody fans at the door. So like some of them were really beautiful fans. Some of them were paper fans, and they were handing out fans. And then when we went in, Frank Zappa came out onto the stage and he said, "Oh, my fans. I love all my fans. Look at all my beautiful fans." And then he continued to rock the house down for a 50-person show.
I think
that unbelievable.
I really think that Phish needs to have a permanent picture of Frank Zappa on their stage on every single show that they play, because without Frank Zappa, Phish is unique. But wow.
They always prop out Frank. I mean, Peaches on Regalia, that's their ode to Frank, and they crush it. I suspect if Frank ever saw them play that, he would be like,
he'd be impressed.
Wow. Hey, Sam, weren't you Frank's neighbor at one point, Sam?
Yeah, for several years in Laurel Canyon. And I dated Dweezil's babysitter, Christina, from Hot Rats in the swimming pool.
Frank was the only one allowed to even jam with like Pink Floyd. They wouldn't jam with anybody, but they would let Frank come up and jam with them.
Well, I've also heard Frank play cover songs of like Jimi Hendrix or Eric Clapton, and Frank can just run circles around I mean, Frank was a genius guitar player, without a doubt. I've been to about maybe 50 of Frank's concerts, and about maybe a similar number of him just practicing.
He was a
Okay,
true
so
composer. He was a true composer's
No,
composer.
he was a musical genius without
You
a
know
doubt.
what? It's hard to mention Frank without mentioning Sun Ra, who was another musical composer. And if you don't know who Sun Ra is, I really, Space is the Place is his autobiography, which is absolutely spectacular. And he has quite a few stories about Frank in that book. Yeah, Sun Ra, Space is the Place.
So is that sort of psychedelic funk?
Oh, yeah.
It's
So
important
Big Steve Parrish, who for many years was Jerry Garcia's roadie, has got a show on XM called Big Steve Hour. And just last week, he was recalling a caller called in and asked why the Dead never played with Zappa. And Big Steve basically said the reason why Zappa didn't like the Grateful Dead is because Zappa hated cannabis.
Yeah, he hated a lot of drugs.
He hated cannabis, having to deal with music and rock and roll, and the fact that all rock and roll musicians were kind of categorized as stoners. He said the reason why he didn't come around us because he couldn't deal with the level of cannabis use. And when they did come together, he was a total not social, kind of asshole.
Well, he did like two drugs. He liked nicotine and caffeine.
Yeah,
and sex.
Yeah, but he hated cannabis, and his cannabis use is his hatred for cannabis use is well documented.
It talked about in Space is the Place as well. They talk about it in the autobiography that because people who played with Sun Ra also played with Frank. And they had strict rules to not hang out with not just the Grateful Dead, but a huge amount of people and groups and musicians that were doing all sorts of drugs because, it altered his, he was an OCD genius that wanted everyone to be doing kind of, composing what they wanted.
Right.
And if they were tripping balls on acid, it wasn't coming together for him, I guess.
Zappa reminds me of like a more accessible John McLaughlin. I always kind of associated their work very similar, but he was just more accessible and was more together in terms of the way he put music out.
I was just going to add, the only thing about the movie that I found a little disappointing was, there were so many players in and out of the Mothers, especially in the earlier years, that were fucking incredible. Lowell George got kicked out of the Mothers because of his drug use. I mean, he went on and made Little Feat. There's just the list is endless of musicians that were around Frank Zappa that recognized.
Don't forget Jimmy Carl Black. He's the Indian of the group.
And how about a shout out for Bill Laswell? Shout out for Bill Laswell. He's got, he's been involved in thousands of recordings. When you mentioned John McLaughlin, I immediately clicked to Bill Laswell, and he's got
Bill, John Zorn, a lot of those guys.
Oh, Zorn.
Yeah, the downtown, the
Zorn.
Not mention the Stone in New York. I mean, there's a huge I was involved in the downtown scene a bit, and those guys, like, I think Bill lives in San Francisco now and he's still doing shows, much smaller settings, but yeah, an incredible player and someone that's inspired myself. And I know that he's really moved music forward in terms of what you're saying, Mark, through the 90s. I think he held the torch in terms of experimental stuff.
Yeah. Who takes a Miles Davis album?
I know.
Or who takes a Bob Marley album?
Yeah.
It's like, I'm just going to fuck with this and see what I can pull off of that. And that I can't remember the titles.
Panthalassa is the Miles one.
Panthalassa.
I can't remember
the
good Marley one, but incredible albums and really deep. It's like very psychedelic in a lot of senses. I'd highly recommend Panthalassa to anyone.
Dreams of Freedom, ambient translations of Bob Marley in dub.
Ravi Shankar.
Yeah, I was saying Ravi Shankar. He was one that was not okay with cannabis smoking. He wasn't okay with drugs
and was influencing the culture.
But he decided that he was going to just open himself up to it because there was a dream, and also he had a healer who he had been working with his whole life ever since he was a child. and the healer had told him, I do think that you need to open up your music, for him and open up your arms to this. And I think that because he did that, it really made his music so much better, so much more rich.
Well,
to
and he gave music an incredible gift, right? Nora Jones is his daughter, and she's incredible.
Well,
I don't know if you've ever seen Nora. Yeah, she's unbelievable.
And how about we shout out Ustad Alahaka Hussein, if we're going to shout out Ravi Shankar, and his son Zakir Hussein, who is probably one of the greatest players of the tabla to ever walk the face of the earth. That man brought me to tears at several concerts that I've recorded of
I saw him with the Grateful Dead back in the day.
Yeah. Their music really changed for the better. I believe it became so much more worldly and so much more palatable when cannabis became sort of part of, the tuning of it. And he even talks about it sort of intimately in an interview of how against drugs he is and how he does feel like playing with other people under the influence did help his music, did help him actually, he says, reach Shiva in a different way. That's pretty interesting that he was open like that.
I would just add an opposite end of the spectrum and just give a lot of love to George Clinton and the P-Funk All-Stars and Funkadelic and their whole influence on the culture and spoken word.
Bootsy.
Bootsy. Bootsy came from that traditional James Brown style and then just blew the top off with George Clinton. So like by the time we saw George Clinton in the early 90s, I mean, that was 5 to 6 hours straight, no breaks, total church, just rhythm down to the core.
And if it weren't for LSD, it would be really hard to go to one of those shows.
And I remember seeing him come out on stage with a cape that just said "Inhale" on it, just like arms wide open. It was so rad.
Hey, welcome, Debbie.
How's it going?
It's going good. I saw you on Clubhouse the other day. I was like, Debbie's on Clubhouse.
Oh, yeah. Hi, Debbie.
Hey, Colin. I like Clubhouse. It's fun. I was on there this morning talking about a heavy topic. Should white women be considered equity under these cannabis regulations? And I don't think so. Equality, we're working for equality, but equity is a different thing. So, oh man, that's a fun way to wake up your Sunday.
I saw you in that room and I was like, damn, that's going to be some heavy conversation going on in there.
It was fun. It was fun though. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, welcome. We've been talking about music all day. We've talked very little about, we started out talking about ketamine and psychedelics as we have the Ames Institute, Dr. Allison and AC Braddock and some other women did some journeys there yesterday, and I guess they're going to go again today. So they started us out talking about every drug but cannabis. And then that kind of led us into all of these amazing sort of musicians. And it's been an interesting, like I'll say, like, once again, even when we're just shooting the shit, like if you want to learn about some great musicians and bands, the last 45-minute conversation in here dropped like, I want to say 50 plus musicians. And I'm guessing not everyone knew the names of each person that we dropped. So yeah, just talking about all these great musicians and the sort of effects that psychedelics and cannabis has had on these musicians. And yeah, just
here's my contribution. I ate an edible a couple of weeks ago and I made a 7-hour Spotify playlist. So, you can go get that.
Damn, I'll check that out. Yeah, send that to me. Send that to me. I'll put it up in the comment.
We were talking the Dead, Debbie, so I bet you there's 1 or 2 songs on there because as we know how beneficial or influential the lots were to, Can and to getting the message out on cannabis.
Hell yeah. I put one 11-minute long Grateful Dead song on there and then I realized, well, I can't do that again because that's when people turn off the playlist. But
that's when some people turn on the playlist.
That's a short Dark Star. That Dark Star is too short.
I like Alligator. I put Alligator on there because that's the ultimate LSD recording, like that's the one where they were just so high on every drug possible. They're like, let us in the studio, I love that one.
I
I used
kind
to
of like
take
the Viola Lee blues from back in the day too. A good old Viola Lee blues where they hit that drop at the end and they just get right back in the room. It's just like, oh,
Do you guys listen to the XM channel, the Grateful Dead channel on XM? They have Today
Yep.
in Grateful Dead History. Well, the last couple of days they've been playing the shows from the Fillmore East, February 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, New
With
York
Trey?
City, 1970. You know,
Oh yeah.
and I've had these on cassette tapes since I was probably a sophomore in high school. So I'm going back to 1970, I don't know, 8-ish. So, oh my God, to hear those in such great sound quality is just unbelievable. And the Almonds came out during, I think it was Love Light or something like that. And you could hear Greg Allman singing because Greg Allman takes the mic. And you could totally make out Dwayne's playing because Dwayne just sounds different than Garcia. It's just not Garcia at all. I mean, I've been listening to this piece of music for,
isn't that where the Almonds really got influenced by the Dead to really go
I think
into
so.
the jam and shred? Yeah, I feel like that was the
Yeah,
show.
well,
that
they always
really-
had, they had the two drummer thing going on too. And I think both of those bands mutually influenced each other. But if you think about that, it was such a magical period for the Dead because they were just about to go into the studio and record Working Man's Dead. Then, later on in the year, they get busted in New Orleans. And so now they got to, quickly put American Beauty together. So those two albums came out in 1970, and I was only 8 years old when they came out. But I was on tour, just a handful of years later. And it was, oh my God, so magical. They were so great.
1972, Veneta Oregon Country Fair show where they did a Springfield Creamery benefit, which was Ken Kesey's brother has a Springfield Creamery, which is Nancy's yogurt, which is the first yogurt in America to have probiotics. Thanks, Ken Kesey, and family for introducing probiotics to us in our yogurt back in the early 70s. And then to have 20,000 people show up at the Oregon Country Fair lot 1972, minimal cars in the parking lot because most people came in school buses or hitchhiked. And it was like 110 degrees out.
Well, that was during the gas lines too. So nobody wanted to wait in the gas lines. They're all hitching out.
Anyway, Sunshine Daydream is the name of the show.
Yeah, the movie. Yeah, that movie. I think that movie is either on Amazon or something. You could watch it. I think there's clips of it on. I know the Bird Song is up on YouTube. And again, yeah, that really weird, completely stark naked hippie that's kind of like behind Jerry, right? And the camera, every once in a while, you get Jerry and you get this naked hippie who's kind of like doing that, sitting up on a pole. Oh yeah, what an incredible show. I, again, had those tapes for years. Some of my most played cassette tapes that I have in my collection are those Veneta shows.
I randomly put on my Dancing Bear scarf. I don't know if you guys can see this, but I just apparently came right in at the right time. By the way, ATN, remember all those farm kids that came and helped us at Cannabis Action Network, like the second generation kids from the farm in Tennessee?
Yeah, Melina.
The hemp movement. Yeah.
Yeah, we actually went to the farm in Tennessee and they made us fresh mushrooms and fresh tofu. And yeah, they're great, amazing people, man.
Steve and Ina Mae Gaskin.
Yeah, Stephen Gaskin actually married me at my original wedding at the High Times Cannabis Cup.
I was there.
We know Stephen and Ina also. That's super
Midwifery.
cool because of our midwifery connection. And
anyone who doesn't have the book Spiritual Midwifery, that is a must-have book. Whether you're having a baby or not, there's beautiful stories in there of people that took their power back and had home births. They created a whole line of buses and school buses that went around the country. And then they finally settled in Tennessee and created a thing called The Farm. And The Farm still functions to this day as let's say a women and children's health clinic along with
educational outreach for midwives.
Okay, wait, we're not,
and herbal healing.
We're not talking about the 7 Tribes buses, are we? Those crazy brown and white buses.
Extremely different. The 12 tribes is the group that got the people that were too high.
That was
and
Joshua.
And then they've comforted them with Jesus and Christianity and food.
Right.
The family.
And I have to say, I pulled my girlfriends off of those buses all the time. My first modus operandi was if anybody was missing, I would go and see Joshua in the buses and be like, all right, someone's missing. And there they would be drinking chai in the back, telling me they were having the best experience of their life and they were going to go home to Oklahoma with them.
So, that's also, the 12 tribes also is a very amazing group of self-sufficient people that creates really good food at festivals like Common Ground
Which
Cafe.
is now more of the common
There's even
term.
12 tribes up here in British Columbia, and they have places that are really powerful. So, it's definitely a cult.
A lot of the mustard seed cafes and stuff are still run by them, but they're not so scary.
They're like earth-loving
anymore.
Christian anarchists.
I remember the Common Grounders that moved into Winnipeg, and they were definitely very much the same people that had those buses on Dead Tour. They like, come and eat our bakery goods, and
I
you
was
couldn't
told
have
to stay away from those buses.
Oh,
man.
dude, I'm telling you,
went
you
and I
definitely
checked
want
them
to
out
stay away
because I
from
wanted to
those
see the
buses.
people that they were
hot
able to attract.
Hey, Mark, I'd go in there, I'd check them out, but yeah, I was told the same
Soothing
thing.
fiddle music in the background. So endearing.
The Spinners. I wonder how many of those people still are around with their little followings.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen Spinners in a long time, but that's definitely where I would hang out.
I'll say this much: they couldn't keep up with
I
Fish
did a
Tour.
5.5 hour spin once, and that was pretty incredible. I feel like I entered a new realm. We talk a lot about, drugs and meditation and things that get you into other realms and into, other lines of thinking. And spinning is unbelievably incredible. And, the whole Sufi religion is sparked off of that. And anyone who hasn't taken a moment to spin in a really big open field and spin past where you're scared, spin past where you're dizzy, and there's this incredible calm in the center. And people spin to find that incredible calm, and they say that it's a place where you can clearly speak to God. And it really is like a true place. And I found that
it's balance
so many times at Dead shows. And I never even knew these people. I never even spoke to these people. I would just go and spin for 4 hours next to them and feel this vibration and find maybe some questions that I was looking for in the week or, in my life.
Between sets at Oakland, there was the spinners and the percussion players. The percussion players were
just
amazing.
beyond the confines of Shakedown Street, usually toward the end, they had the disco bus. You remember the disco bus? And so the disco bus would put these really big speakers on top of the bus and just blare the loudest disco music and just attract this crowd of really spun out people all around just grooving disco. It was great, man. It's so fun.
See, that's the term spun out, is when you don't find the center of the spin. When you find the center of the spin, you have balance and you never get spun out. Wow. And I think it's interesting, how the Sufis are, extremely, they're Muslim, but I think we're paused. They also smoke hash. And very open to cannabis use in the Sufi religion. It's no connection.
And the disco bus for sure, because it always made you say, yeah, after the show, okay, I'll have another hit. Because you knew the disco bus was going to go on for another 4 more hours and you were safe and taking another
killer
hit.
bags of weed were found at the disco bus. Let's be real.
Well,
Like you
and eventually the nitrous mob would find the disco bus, and so then the people would start buying balloons, which would feed the disco bus. So you'd have all these balloonatics all sucking on nitrous, all dancing disco. It
I wonder how
So-
different the scene would have been if the Full Melt bubble could have been there on the early Grateful Dead days. They never had it.
There was Bubble and Keef at Grateful Dead. It just wasn't popularized in the same way. There were heady, insane hash oil makers in Eugene at the time. So
Just not
it
full
was
melt
not-
hash.
it was
You
not-
never saw full melt hash. You might have seen hash oil, but you weren't seeing full melt hash at those shows.
When you dry sift, those dry sifts melt, as we know.
They do. They
And-
absolutely melt. They just aren't full melt. They melted what they thought was the meltiest of the dry sift. They were probably 50% heads, but
there was beautiful origins there, we'll say.
Yeah.
There was also hash. The old there was still an import business at that point with the hashes coming through. So we said, I mean, none of it seemed very good, but you could still get the kind of brown and black hashes that came in bricks.
Totally. That was the
Lebanese
more
water
likely.
hash was the best. And I feel like that that would definitely bubble up. I don't know anybody that tours. You would buy it and they would just measure it out, not have a scale, because having a scale at that time either was difficult or it was always the triple beam and you didn't really want to have a scale on you. So they had the long coils and then they would just measure it out to like a half inch or an inch, and that was what the weight of it was. And when you lit that up right at first, it definitely had a sweet bubble to it.
But
and
not
it was what
full
really
melt.
quite not even close to full melt, but it would bubble just for a second. And I remember talking about how cool that was, you know.
I just remember being at the whole enchilada country fair, like really early 90s, and some crazy, amazing hippie coming out and pretty much knocking us over with Keef. You know, like we were just like, what the hell is this? And it was really special, you know.
It was
But then
unicorn
country
tears
fair-
back then.
Country fair was the collection of the most heady people. So there, you know,
One
you
of
were
the-
gonna
one of
find
the,
you were
yeah.
gonna find the best either there or at the Southern Oregon Barter Fair. One of the two.
I forgot about the days when we were all experts at eyeballing the weight of cannabis just by looking at it. Like the art of eyeballing the gram and eighth and a quarter an ounce. Hell yeah.
It was
Dude, I
based on
always
the
had the
fingers.
fish scale.
How many
The fish-
fingers?
Yeah. Taking it back. Time for a dab, everybody. Let's do this up. Got some cookies and cream going down in my bowl right now.
Let me go with
All this talk of hash got me excited.
Me and ATN spun off from Dead Tour onto the other tours. We did Vans, Further. We did
Horde.
Lollapalooza, Horde. We were everywhere. Fishbone took us out. Primus took us out.
Primus
Oh,
took
yeah.
us out. Yeah.
That was fun.
Were you guys at the festival? What was it, the last Outside Lands where they actually allowed cannabis sales on site at the festival?
I didn't
No.
know that one. The Greenlands or something like that it was called. I missed it.
Yeah, Susan's
So
doing
cool.
that, I think. Susan Soares.
Was that a success, or did the people who put that together? I mean, is there gonna be more things like that? You know?
I think there'll definitely be more things like that. Yeah, as soon as they would have had one this time, I think it would have happened again. Definitely.
Yeah, I know Susan was also doing it at what's the big festival down in Southern California in February?
Coachella.
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 Yeah, Coachella. I know they're gonna
Right,
do
so-
that there as well.
I gotta get change my bong
Are they
water.
gonna have stupid
And
like
what's the
onerous things
biggest
where
concert
you have to
that you-
buy your cannabis over here and you have to smoke it over here? And you're not gonna be able to like mingle in the rest of the crowd. I mean, is it gonna be like really restrictive on where you can use it? Do you know? No.
I know people are trying to get kiosks at like Shoreline and other places so that whenever there are shows, they can actually show up and actually have a cannabis kiosk. But I've only heard the discussions of that. I've not actually seen it in real practice because that was all getting ready to kick off pre-COVID. But yeah, my fear is the same as you, Mark, is that you wouldn't be able to bring in your own cannabis. You would have to buy this expensive ass, whatever weed we decide you have to buy and to consume it here. I don't know if it's a
And then you have to consume
BYOB
it.
or being
You have to consume
BYOG.
it in the beer garden area that they're telling you to consume it in. It's not like you can buy it and take it back to your seat, which is bullshit.
Which
That kind of
is
stuff.
even worse with cannabis because they want to put up a wall. It's like somehow it's okay to see someone drinking something because, you know, that could be water, it could be juice, it could be alcohol. But smoking, like in Washington, they've done a few events and they make them put up an 8-foot wall in the park. So you have a band over here, and then you have this sectioned off 8-foot wall where everyone's smoking weed and they can't see the band. And then there's 2 people in front of the band, like.
See here at the Emerald Cup in California, they have the alcohol people penned up in their pens, and you can smoke cannabis anywhere pretty much. So
That's
you know,
what's up.
that's how it should be, and that's how hopefully it will become. But yeah, this separation of church and state, yeah, alcohol, they need to be penned. Cannabis, they should be allowed to run.
Agreed. Here.
What's that, Sam?
What's the biggest music event that folks have been to? With me, it was 400,000 people.
I would have to say my biggest event was certainly not a music event. It was the Maha Kumbh Mela, and I think there was like 2.8 million people there.
Oh. Did you meet most of them?
I met like a good chunk of them, you know, all the ones with good hash anyway, the ones that I needed to meet.
Was there a porta potty in sight?
No, you just shit in the Ganges, dude. I'm joking. This was in the north. It was quite clean. Everyone thinks the Ganges are so disgusting and dirty because of Varanasi, where they burn the bodies. This is up north in Haridwar near Rishikesh.
No, the water's quite nice up there.
It's beautiful. People were like, "Oh my God, you went in the Ganges?" I'm like, "Yeah, dude. It was like looked like North Vancouver. Like it was just like water coming out of foothills of the Himalayas. Like it was really beautiful." I wanted to kind of. Go ahead.
I swam in the Ganges in Benares, and I saw pieces of body burnt float by.
Yeah, like a hand.
It was actually less than a hand.
Oh, it happens. I kind of wanted to change the subject a little bit because recently what I did was I went on a 3-day tour here in the interior, in the Okanagan. I went to Penticton and I went to Vernon and I went to Kelowna, cruised around to some other little smaller spots like Oliver. And I went and visited all these different people with shops. And I kind of wanted to get your guys' opinion on this because, you know, these people have, some of them are legacy, some of them are not. Either way, both sides have like spent an enormous amount of time and energy to get to where they are by now first being potentially civil disobedient, but now kind of saying, okay, we're going to follow the rules. We're going to get in line. We're going to jump through these burning hoops. And so they've got their shops. And of course, you know, all their shops there's some difference. I definitely didn't come to the Coots. I would have been at your place. You kidding me? That was Josh and Kelly texting me privately. Better not have come to the Coots. Of course not. I would be talking to you for sure. So, you know, to get this out, basically, you know, you can kind of create different vibes in your shops, but every single package looks exactly the same. So you know, it's this Canada packaging thing that really kind of affects, you know, your ability to stand out. I will give it up to the Cottage. I believe in Penticton. I thought it was so cool. And if you go on my Instagram, you might still be able to see the shots. It was a little cottage. And then you walk in and it looked like the foyer of a little old lady's home with these beautiful couches and plants and stuff. And then there was plants growing down the walls. And then you walked into this great room that was all hardwood floors and all wooden kind of walls and beautiful wallpaper like what's behind Josh and Kelly, you know, really cool all around the place. It set a vibe. I felt like I was visiting my plug who stayed at his grandma's house the night before. And then you walk in and there's just a guy standing there behind a couple of counters and he was super nice and super cool. And so you've got all these people working really hard, trying to get this done. And now you have this other element. You have the Indigenous people who are like, well, we want to play too. We've got our sovereignty. We want to play. We should be allowed to play. So I wish I remembered her name. Selena, who is in Vernon, had told me the story of a good friend of hers who is a native woman and was trying to go the route of the legal. And it was just like one obstacle wall after another. And finally she was like, you know what? I'm going to throw a sea can down right on native property. And we're just going to start selling weed like that. I think she even created something called the Green Mile, where there's like a bunch of them all kind of together. And if you drive through the Okanagan, they're everywhere. They are literally everywhere, and they don't have limits. They can sell as much as they want. They can advertise. So they have signs all over the highways and on posts and stuff. And let me tell you, it was a point of contention with a lot of the shop owners. And I think the rep that I was with was extremely surprised when I said what I said. And I think you guys might have an idea what I'm going to say. I said, they were like, well, it's not fair. It's not fair. They don't have to follow the rules. We've had to do all this stuff. And I'm like, really? It's not fair, hey? So, but what about when you stole their children and murdered their ancestors? What about when our ancestors did that? What about that? That also was not fair. Well, I thought the rep was going to have a heart attack when I said that to the first store owner in, I think it was in Penticton. I found the conversation to be enlightening. I told them that they need to get behind the Indigenous population and the natives, and they need to support them in every way that they can. You do not want to stand against these people on this issue. Cannabis is actually making something a little bit right. Somehow cannabis is making things right for the native population right now in Canada. And I just thought, holy fuck, this is amazing. And I also convinced each and every one of those stores that I had this discussion with that it will help you, believe it or not, because the government's going to see it. They're going to realize there's no competing with these no limits and edible no limits and go in and buy a quarter pound if you want and advertise on the street. And I really am a firm believer that that's going to leach over into the legal federal program that we have now, because there's no getting away from it. This loophole is so good. The government is absolutely fucked on this one. And it's also the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Does that
And,
mean
Mark,
that materials are not analyzed for safety?
I would say some probably are and some probably aren't. I don't want to say, but yeah, they definitely don't have to follow all the same regulations. In fact, any of them, it's their own thing. And the shops are busy. People are definitely buying at those shops and finding loyalty there. So I think that not standing against them is one of the biggest mistakes you could make as a cannabis shop owner right now, in my opinion.
And I'm going to say one
I
other
think
thing.
that we have such an incredible opportunity right now to be able to work with the Indigenous nations in Canada, to be able to get rightful education in there, because they have sort of a wide open slate. And we're finding that these shop owners and a lot of people of the First Nations are so incredibly open to doing it right and stepping in a way that is really empowering the First Nations and also empowering cannabis. So we're working with the ministry right now. We're putting together so many different SOPs, different pilot projects that's working directly with the First Nations peoples, because this is a loophole that cannabis can have a higher, better voice and a higher effect on the federal laws, so that we can put things into place to say, see, look at how this can actually be done better. So it would be really silly for the LPs to go against anything that's happening there, because they also have the ability to go through this direction to change the way that cannabis commerce is being done today also. So it's a really incredible opportunity. And thank you so much, Marcus, for both defending that and also bringing up this, because we've been living and breathing this in our home right now, and working with the ministry and writing down SOPs and really working hard to give cannabis more of a medical stance, which is where it needs to be.
There's a lot of deep issues on that. And I would encourage people to look up what residential schools are in Canada, and also Indigenous women going missing and murdered in Canada is a really huge thing. And also in First Nations in tribes, there's a lot of issues with addiction, and cannabis is helping that. So there's a lot of tribes and nations that are coming together to accept it, to help them, with their addictions. So we see it as a really positive.
And I also, for any people who are associated with LPs, in order to have LPs, there has to be a portion that you've made a commitment towards education. You've made a commitment to the communities that you're set up in. And I really want to plead and encourage these LPs to reach out to these Indigenous nations, to reach out to a lot of these different shop owners, and let's start swapping education. Let's use that federal funding to make bridges for cannabis. This is really important, and we still have doors open to create more education for the general public, as well as for the First Nations, as well as for a lot of addictions that Josh was just mentioning that are just super incredibly high here in Canada.
Currently in British Columbia,
cannabis can help.
Currently in British Columbia, addictions and opioid deaths are killing more people than COVID, if I'm not, mistaken on that. And also, yeah, it's way higher. So it's like, oh great, we're all wearing masks, but that is not stopping deaths. But Johnny B, it looked like you had something to say, and I'd be interested to hear what you were thinking.
Well, when it comes to medical and you're talking about this, and you can go into say Chilliwack, and I can go in and buy chocolate that's 10 milligrams, but I can go down the street to the Reserve and buy a bag of gummies that's 250 milligrams. So I mean, there's quite a difference when it comes to medical. So I mean, if you're in need of those type of edibles, that's where you go, because they actually have what you need. They actually have those high doses, so I don't have to sit here and eat like 25 of these. I'm taking 250 milligram caps. I go to the store here, I can only buy 10 milligrams at a time. So that's really disgusting. And then if I buy more than 4 items, well, that's over my 30 grams. So I actually have to leave and go back in. Right. So, I mean,
you got to go home and then go back in, because you can't have all of that on you out in the world. You'd have,
wait a second. I'm medical, so I can carry 150 grams. So
right.
I can go in and out a few times because I am medical, but once again, so I'm going to have to walk out with a huge bag in order to get my, so that's why I like what's going on with what's happening on the tribe stuff, is they're actually able to cater to those high doses edibles that are needed. And that's one other thing that the government's really got to lighten up on, because that's another encouragement for people to go there and get proper dosaging for themselves, because you can't get that in the legal system in reality, but that is a legal system. So let me rephrase that. You can get this only in certain parts in the system that are legal.
You know what also, Johnny, that there's this real limitations with the legal system for LPs. And the limitation is that if we want to supply a province, they're going to require that we, make some product, sell it to them. And then if they sell that product and it's good, and people like it, they want to be able to order it right away. And if you don't have it available to order right away, you can fall to the bottom of the queue. And so people are desperate to make sure. So right away, that limits you massively. Now, there's no way that you can support a craft grower who's only growing small amounts, because I'm going to buy 50 kilos from this guy and he's not going to have it again for 3 more months. Like, this might sell out in 2 days. I might need to have a reorder available in 7 days. It's another reason why we're limited to not seeing 90 micron, 73 micron. How the hell am I going to produce 10 kilos of just 90 micron and then have another 10 kilos of it available in a month or a week or 2 months? So what happens is all of that other small lot gets funneled into medical, the very place it shouldn't be, because when medical people find something that they like, they love, they need, and you're never going to make it again. Oh, sorry, man, that was just a couple 100 grams. We just got a certain amount of stuff from so-and-so, and we're probably not going to see that stuff anymore. I think he killed the clone, so they've got it set up to protect the recreational market. So you always have more and it's available, or you drop the queue, but they've left the most vulnerable people, once again, the very people who everyone used as their shield for the last 10 plus years in Canada, so they could continue to grow cannabis, sell it, and pay their mortgages while claiming it was for the patient. It's just bullshit. I mean, there's a lot of bullshit still there, but civil disobedience got us this far. A little bit more civil disobedience will get us further. Sorry, Debbie, did you have something to say?
No, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm so sorry. But yeah, on the topic of bullshit, I wanted to tell you guys the bad news about the California law, which is that people who live on the Native American reservations here, if they want to participate in the cannabis industry, they have to sign away their sovereign rights. So there is only one cannabis company that's owned by a Native American in the entire state, and nobody that lives on the reservation. Who's going to sign away their sovereign rights to be able to participate in the cannabis industry? it's an absolute travesty. So
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up. I'm in Washington, and it's the similar deal because of the lack of federal allowance, that the tribes here, they in Washington choose to operate underwater. They've done it. They have a pact deal, and it's been a big to do. It took them a couple of years to figure out, but they did some pact, but they basically operate as if they're licensed recreational stores. You wouldn't know the difference. They have the same product. They buy from 502 producers. Interestingly, they lined it up where they can ship to other tribes. So they kind of did have that forethought that they could ship to any other sovereign nation, tribe. But it's not what you're talking about, Marcus. And they didn't have the guts, I think, because of our federal deal.
And Debbie,
Yeah, totally.
Giving our sovereign rights. I mean, that's the game right now, and I don't necessarily want to get into it right now. We're dealing with state of emergency all over the place here in Canada, and sovereign rights are being given up left, right, and center, and handing it over. I know that's a bigger conversation, but wow, my heart goes down into the chair.
And I think people could
look relevant right now.
They could look into what it means to be a sovereign. I'm thankful for what's happening in Canada right now, though, because there is, a medical program that is still functioning, and that is a good thing for medical people. And I would just, on the note of someone finding a strain or one particular varietal that works for them and then being worried about whether they can get it again, I think it's really important for those people to look into potentially, if they can, having that strain on their land and growing that as one of their 4 plants, because especially in Canada, you can do that. And nothing connects, yeah, grow your own. And now you're connected to the plant itself. You're connected to the life creation process, and you're making your own medicine, which is a self-empowering action. And you're continuing to have the same varietal that works for you.
And if you can grow 4 of your own, and you're going to do it outside because you don't want to invest a whole bunch of money into having an indoor system and you don't know how to do it, well, I really suggest that you do it regeneratively, because if you need those 200 milligram gummies throughout the whole year, then you want to grow those plants really, really big. And you want to grow them heavyweight, and you want to grow really good medicine that you can have throughout the year. And now that is having sovereignty with cannabis. So if we want to talk sovereignty with cannabis, everybody can grow their own cannabis still here in Canada. And really, we all need to take the federal government up on that, and also have medical for more than 4.
I'm gonna say, yeah, and those 4 plants can be as big as you can grow them. If you look down south, they're growing plants getting 25 pounds out of one plant. So I mean, you can veg this all through your winter inside if you want. The first bit of sunshine, put that thing outside, bury it in the dirt, have those soils ready, and feed that thing, because it's gonna reach for the skies, guys. And you can really, because you're not limited to how much, you're only limited to how many. You can only carry 30 grams with you, but when you're at home, sky's the limit. So remember that. So it's not about, you can get as much as you can. There's different methods of growing 4 plants indoors. I did 1 plant under each light. I've seen people now just at a place, the guy completely bonsai'd a plant, made 1 plant, really it's 4 feet by 4 feet. I was pretty amazed. I'm gonna go back and take some pictures today, this afternoon. It's really cool what people are doing out there with their 4 plant limit, guys. So definitely grow your own. I love it.
Hey, and I want to add to that, grow your own. I want to give Selena and the Wise Woman Seed Company a huge shout out, because she gave me this incredible pack of seeds from Wise Women Seeds. And they are like heirloom tomatoes, like sage plants, some violets, some some amaranth, just endless amounts of awesome seeds, all sorts of foods and companion plants. And I am definitely wanting to shout out Wise Woman Seeds and Selena in particular for helping curate this for my wife and my family and I. We're going to build some, I'm going to be talking to the Dragonfly Earth Medicine. We're going to get some proper area built up and some good soils in, and yeah, get these seeds cracking.
Grow your own, baby.
Build it. Because we're going to head out to the coast here soon. We're going to come help you build it.
Awesome. That's what's up.
You're gonna stop by my place, me too, and help me.
Yeah, definitely, Johnny, for sure. We're without a doubt. We're also heading out to Victoria to see a fight with Elias, who's the first Canadian athlete to be a THC cannabis athlete, and he's on our story right now. So big love to Elias and the work that he's been doing at becoming a cannabis athlete. So we're going to be supporting
and really pushing the conversation forward, that how silly that you're saying that it's okay to use a plant, but only part of the plant. And this sort of separatism has to end. Oh, okay, well, you can use the plant, but you can only use part of the plant, and if you use this part of the plant, then you could be tested. And I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous. I think that often humans run themselves in a circle and eat their tail, and we just need to stop this. The plant gives us what it needs in the right doses, that for us to be able to get relief from, and for us to be able to live happier, healthy lives, especially athletes who are not really supported except by sponsors, and maybe they only would get free material or free whatever from different sponsors, but they're not supporting their health, their longevity, and their well-being well into the future. So that conversation really needs to change, because there's a tremendous amount of youth that look up to athletes in the world, and the athletes need to carry the conversation forward with the sponsors backing them of education of health and well-being, so that the youth can be raised in that type of an education.
And I would just add that part of cannabis, what it's given us is earth conscious. It's giving us that nature awareness. So like when Johnny B's talking about having to go to the store and get a stack of 10 milligram things, I mean, that's a lot of garbage. So
and a lot of sugar.
We're healing ourselves while ailing the earth.
Or we're getting diabetes to be able to get 200 milligrams. Like, let's create a little bit of sense here in the idea of holistic understanding. Like, and I have to bring it back to science. Like, we keep relying on only this idealized, specific, standard that takes away all of the holistic versions of it. And then we are only looking at things with blinders on. And the more that we sort of open up the conversation, and sure, we can use that scientific experiment for one of the great discoveries to be able to explain something, that's fantastic. But if we're using it as the only way to explain something and also be able to make laws and move forward on, then we're really missing out on something so much more deep and something so much more powerful for humanity as a whole.
Also, I just say, shout out to Tara Lee. Tara Lee has been is doing a start your own seed thing on her YouTube channel. So for home growers that are interested in having a larger plant or a big plant in their backyard or even inside, starting it now, with the moon cycles is going to be a really good way to get a large plant. And then you have to decide how big of a pot you're going to put it in and how many times you think you'll have to transplant it in the few months, 2 or 3 months it's going to take to put it in the ground. But, there's some good in-depth conversation going on there.
And DEM Pure is going to be putting out a contest, but we don't want to call it a contest. We want to call it a protest, but it's not like your traditional type of a protest. It's sort of like a fun protest, and put it out of like, show us your 4 plants. and talk about all the other things that you could be growing in and show us your legal plants, so that all those people can partake in this education too, and
a
have
backyard
stuff.
Backyard transformations. We're seeing incredible backyard transformations.
It's been unbelievable.
Brian Lammy on Instagram, has dug out the lawn in his backyard and made trenches and put wood in there. And he's like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm throwing logs in the ground.
We've watched people take up their entire concrete in downtown LA, literally renting a jackhammer. Their entire concrete that they had, for 25 years is all dug up. It goes on and on and on. We've seen so many pictures of people's backyards fully transformed.
We've been talking with Earthkind a lot over the years, URTHKYND, Earthkind and Cannabism 420. He lives in South Central Los Angeles and sometimes in Oregon, but South Central Los Angeles. And we have, as a group, DE and Pure have been talking about creating a regenerative farm, not farm, but an inner city urban farm where you transform a vacant lot into a beautiful garden. And also he's talked about creating, I think this is good for other municipal areas where they have local backyard gardens come together as a co-op and make medicine for themselves. So neighborhoods of people getting together, growing 4 plants in their backyard, and then creating meetings where they can share how to make medicine together, and they all make the medicine together to work to give to themselves throughout the winter. It's self-empowerment, it's community empowerment, and it's herbalism. It's learning about herbalism, because you'll always have companion plants, you'll always have flowers and mint and all the other things.
And what brings community together better than talking about their buds that they grew in their backyard? I mean, come on. We all love talking about our buds that we grow. So it's Josh and I always say that backyard gardens, are going to save the world, and we actually believe that they might be the only thing that can save humanity.
They have to save the world. So I think it's like a Beatles song. They miswrote it. It's come together right now over weed.
I like it. Sorry, I'm dealing with on the side here, someone who's my admin has offended in one of my groups. I don't think people realize how hard it is to administrate these groups on Facebook, and that there's a lot of people who go there just to kind of cause trouble, when we're just kind of trying to curate these groups to share information, to let everyone kind of gain information. And it's endless how many people hit me. Oh, your mod deleted me, or I treated me poorly, and blah, blah. I'm just like, man, it's because of the stress he has. This poor guy is literally, and he's been on Hash Church before. This poor guy has done a lot of good in these groups. He shared an enormous amount of knowledge with people, and you just can't win with these.
Hey, I would like to shout out a few things here real quick. I want to shout out Johnny B. Thank you very much for my hat and cubes, as well as my mask. It's much love and appreciated all the way around there. I also want to congratulate Patients Out of Time. They're having their 25th anniversary right now. And of course, the Emerald Cup. We're actually, we actually changed the actual voting in the last couple of days, because packaging and labeling was part of the overall, and now that's been pulled out, and it's going to be a separate part of the competition altogether. So pushing for environmentally sound packaging. And last but not least, just to be to deal with the realism, we lost an employee this week at Berkeley Patients Group. One of our employees, she was only 30 years old. Morgan Medina passed away suddenly this week. So prayers and ups and love. I've never lost an employee, actually. We've had others retire and pass away, but shout out to their friends, families, and employees and support out there. And she was one who just celebrated her 1-year anniversary with us just last week. And she had extra care and love for patients. And she was one of those unsung heroes that helped everybody. So much love and respect.
Thanks for sharing that, Etienne. That's sorry to hear that. Go ahead, Debbie.
So sorry. I'm going to blame my stuttering behavior on the raw garden stab I did a few minutes ago because I forgot how to use the English language for a minute, but I think I'm back. No, our buddy Bo from Oregon passed away too. I want to mention that. He is known Bo for probably the entire 32 years I've been involved in the movement, and shout out to the Oregon family, and yeah. Yeah, we love you, and happy Valentine's Day, everyone, too. I want to say that. Let's keep love for each other all the time.
Oh, Bo, I was a general manager for Ed Rosenthal, and for his first trial, I had to disappear, and I disappeared a few times. And Bo hid me up in Oregon for 3 weeks and allowed me to go to work in the gardens for John Sajo and the Oregon crew, of which I went and fixed the gardens. They had a whole bunch of large plants that were overgrown with white powdery mildew. So I went in and fixed the plants the whole time I was kind of, sentenced up there. And Bo fed me, hid me out, gave me the room and everything, man. Much love, Bo. You were a great spirit.
And condolences to the BPG posse. That is never easy.
No, and thank you. Just to remember, everybody, we never know if today's your first or your last. So, hug and love and remind each other that, life is short, life is quick, and we have the time that we have. So enjoy it, and don't forget to tell anybody you love them. And in that case, I love you all, especially all you all here. Much love.
Love you guys.
Love.
Sorry for your loss.
I really love you guys. Thanks so much. And I just wanted to say that this time has, created such incredible divisiveness, in the world, in politics, and now, unfortunately, even within own households. So, this divide is being felt everywhere, and it's running really, really deep. And I guess just since it's Valentine's Day, I think that building bridges for love is really important. And, if we're gonna make a choice, and I just always really resonate with what the ancient Buddhists say, and the dreamers who dreamed this existence into time, and that's love and fear. And I just really encourage everyone listening and all of us, and even myself, to really resonate in fear, and resonate in love, and to outride fear, because it really isn't serving anything, and it just creates a continuous noise. So happy Valentine's Day, everybody, and here's to love.
On that note, I think I'm going to cut her short today. I've got my wife and my child waiting on the other side of the door to go hang out and go for a nice little hike. I have absolutely enjoyed today's episode and show with all of you guys. We had some good conversation. I do have a couple of small announcements. I wanted to mention Segra's talk that's going to be had here soon. I believe it's Mark Lewis from NAPRO, Ryan Lee, Chimera Genetics, Rob Connell Clark is going to be there. Mojave Richmond is going to be on that panel. I had sent out an email to Rob mentioning that, hey, if you wanted to come on here and promote it before, and he sort of said, you know what, before, let's not scoop the scoop. We'll do that, and then we'll come on Hash Church afterwards and we can talk about it. So
hey, Marcus.
I know at least he'll
Hey,
come.
Marcus, he's
Yes.
actually in the middle of a patient's out of time conference today.
Yeah, I've been emailing with him actually.
Gotcha.
Yeah, thank you. So he'll probably, those guys, Mojave and all those guys, will get them on in the next couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, and go to segra-intl.com, and they'll have a registration form you can fill out, and you can check out, I believe it's on the 25th of February, the Segra, heavy hitters, growers, breeders panel. I think it's going to be really awesome with the group of guys that they got on there. I also wanted to mention that I did invite Corvain Cooper on through his group. He just was released from prison. I guess he was one of the guys that got Trump pardoned him. And so I thought it would be cool to use Hash Church platform to help him with his reentry, maybe, help, put some money in his GoFundMe and, let him tell his story, use the platform. So we're hoping on getting Corvain on here in the next week or two. And other than that, everyone, thanks for coming and shooting the shit and chatting and being so cool. And I also love each and every one of you. So thank you.
Hey, Wade has something to say before you go.
Yes, please. Two things. I heard on Clubhouse last night that Corvin Cooper is looking for a place to stay somewhere in Southern California for the next 2 weeks. He's got an apartment he's going to be able to move into on March 1st. But between now and then, he's looking for a place to stay. So if anybody's hooked up in that way and have a spot, point him that direction. The other thing I wanted to say was about Valentine's Day. Saint Valentine is also the patron saint of epilepsy. And I spoke to Forrest the other day for the first time in, I don't know, almost 2 months. And he said that he was able to call because Silas was relatively free of seizures. And I wanted to share that with all of you because I know we've had Forrest on here, and I care very much about that family and the struggle that they're living. So yeah, as you walk about and give thanks for love in the world, remember that if you're enjoying full health, give gratitude for that and recognize that it is a gift in your life. And on that note, thank you so much, Marcus and John and Sam and Dragonfly family and Johnny B. And oh my goodness, thank you so much. Hash Church.
That's it, everybody. Peace to the out. We'll see you next week. Ciao for now.